Welcome back to Badger Blitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined by the newest member of the Badger Blitz team, senior writer Michael Hogan. Michael, great to see you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. We mentioned a couple weeks ago when I was at Big Ten Media Day, so happy to come on. And we have plenty to talk about now that the Badgers have 6 practices in the books.
Absolutely. And you were down in Platteville seeing it with your 2 eyes. So I guess I'll just start with a big picture question then for you. Sort of what is the biggest thing that stood out to you from your time in Platteville?
Well, number one, it seems like they really enjoyed that setup for their first, week or so. 6 days. Well, they stayed there last night, so they're there for pretty much a full week, and yeah, they really enjoyed that setup. I think the players appreciated an opportunity to have fewer distractions and to kind of bond together. So I think that was a really big takeaway. Just I was curious to see because a lot of these guys have never done anything like this before, and obviously Luke, and his staff did it at Cincinnati, so they kind of had more experience with it. But the rave reviews from the guys on what the food was a big topic. They all loved the food there. They loved the accommodations. It just kind of was all football really for a full week, and they got a lot done. It seems from the way it sounded, and now they're coming back here on the field wise. I think so far I think the offense overall might be a little bit underwhelming in my opinion. I think there have been some good stretches and moments, but not like full practices like we saw in the spring. The offense would just totally light the defense up. I'm a little bit confused or curious as to the reason why. Is it the defense just kind of after a full spring and then getting into fall camp here? Is it just they are starting to understand the tendencies, or is the offense not doing something? I think maybe we'll have to get a little bit more clarity. I'm not trying to say the offense hasn't been terrible. I'm just saying there have been some hiccups, maybe some shaky quarterback play at times, particularly with the second team. I think Braden Locke has been up and down, throughout the spring. He started off slow in the spring, and then he really, for the rest of the time, was really good, really impressive. I think he's gotten off to a really slow start. Last night, I thought he took some positive steps in the right direction, looked good last night. But we have also seen Miles Burkett get some snaps with the second team too, which I did not envision happening here in fall camp. But Tanner Mordecai, I thought finished really strong in Platteville. The receiving competition has been really entertaining to watch, and we all knew that going in. But you add Bryson Green to the mix. I think if there's the biggest takeaway I have from the whole time there, just in terms of what happened on the field, I think it's Bryson Green. I think there's no way they're going to be able to not have this guy in the field. I know they're talking about, they want 6 receivers, maybe even more than that. I think they could have more than that. I think they have enough guys there that are capable of playing. But, man, Bryson Green just brings something different with that size and strength. I mean, he's just overwhelming for some of these defensive backs. You put it in his area, you just give him a chance, and there's pretty good, the percentage of him coming down with the balls is pretty good. He's going to be dangerous for him down the field and in the red zone. I think they have a guy, you can put him, one-on-one matchup fade route. I mean, we've seen that a couple times here. I mean, that's the way they can use this guy. Everybody was curious to see what he was going to bring because, he didn't practice in the spring. He was dealing with an injury, and the first day, the first couple minutes of that practice, they were throwing, doing one-on-one drills, and you could feel Bryson Green's presence. So that was, an immediate takeaway for me, and it really lasted the whole 6 days. It felt like every day Bryson Green made an impressive catch or, went over the top at some cornerback. There was one throw, I can't remember what, because all the days are kind of blend into each other. It felt like that, like I was telling you before, it all felt the same all 6 days. There was a throw down the sideline. There was 2 defenders in the area, and both of them were in good position, in good coverage, and Bryson Green just totally bullied him and made the catch. I mean, I can't say enough good things about him after watching him. And Darian Varner, and another transfer that we didn't get to see in the spring, is kind of starting to work his way back. We got to see him a little bit Sunday and yesterday night. You watch him during one-on-one pass rush drills, and he's just got a different kind of power to him. lower body strength. He's got speed, good speed too. So I'll be curious to see what he can do when he gets maybe couple more chances to do some team stuff, because he's still kind of playing it slow with him, and Jake Renfro too, his center, Cincinnati transfer, getting healthier, kind of slowly coming along, doing some team stuff. So I think the health and what these transfers that we didn't really get to see that much in the spring was big. And I also think the defensive backs. I think maybe coming out of spring, it was a big question mark because they lacked depth. They had a solid top three guys in Hallman, and Smith and Maitre transfer from Boston College, but they added Nazir Forquern. I still struggle with the last name there, but I feel like I was telling somebody last night, I feel like he's made a play or two every single day so far in camp, whether that be an interception or, a pass breakup. Luke Fickell really likes his length, as everybody kind of knows. The staff likes longer and bigger and taller corners. He fits the mold there. I think they got something in him. I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the field a lot this fall. And you've seen some of the younger guys too, like Jonas DeClona. Has looked really confident. Really looks like he's built off of a nice start in the spring. I think he's put himself in good spot. One guy I don't think we didn't really hear from. He didn't make plays. Maybe that's a good thing if you're a corner, you're not getting thrown at. Mike Mack. I think they had. We'll see what happens. I think he can be in the mix too. So I think they can feel really good about their depth at corner now. All of a sudden, you got a young guy in DeClona who's taking steps. And you got some transfers that you just have more depth there. You feel better about your situation. And Amari Snowden too is another guy. I don't know if he'll have a role this year, but you like the measurables on him. He's big. He's physical, and he was working with the third team defense, and he made a couple plays. So it was nice to see that depth at cornerback. Kind of you feel better. I think the staff feels better about it. The fans can feel better about it too. And obviously they have a ton of guys at safety. So, so I think those are my biggest takeaways. And then, the defensive line, I think, a lot of rotation there. People are going to get caught up on the depth chart when it gets released, but I don't think there are some positions on the defense, especially, that you probably just can't really read much into it, because defensive line, you're going to see, maybe 4, 5, 6 guys a game get chances, get snaps. Rodas Johnson, James Thompson Jr., Gio Paez, and Kurt Neal and Darian Varner. I'm probably forgetting a guy or two.
Isaiah Mullins.
So, I think you're going to see a lot of different guys depending on the situation, depending on certain factors that they can use these guys in different ways. Same with the outside linebackers too. I think two guys are going to be at the top of the depth chart when it gets released, but I still think you're going to see a lot of. You're going to see a lot of C.J. Getz. You're going to see Jeff Petrowski. You're going to see T.J. Bullers, Daryl Peterson, Caden Johnson. You're going to see a lot of different guys on the field. And Luke Fickell has talked about wanting like 22 guys like on that side of the ball, and even offense. Like you want to have 22 guys, 23 guys ready to play on both sides of the ball. And we saw that was coming. That was kind of coming to fruition here so far. And in camp, we didn't I don't think we saw a ton of that in the spring, but now now they get to know these guys a little bit better and who can do what. They're starting to take advantage of guys in different spots and using their strengths. So, obviously a lot to like about what we saw there in Platteville, and they got a day off today, and now camp resumes on Wednesday here in Madison.
So you talked a lot about some of the transfers who've come in and we're seeing them for the first time. Who was the guy that you thought made the biggest noticeable jump from spring to summer?
In terms of transfers?
No, in terms of anyone who played in the spring and you saw here in the first week.
That's a good question.
Because a lot of the guys you were talking about there were guys we didn't see in the spring, right? We didn't really see Jake Renfro. We didn't really see Bryson Green.
Biggest jump from the spring. It's hard to judge offensive line play when they're not going in full pads, and a run that goes for 15 yards in a practice in a game might go for maybe 2 or 3. It's kind of hard to tell, but I think they really like what they have in Joe Huber. I think, from the sounds of it, that they're really happy with what he's been able to do. Has he made a jump from the spring? I think, Jack Bicknell would probably say yes. Me, who's not an offensive line savant, I don't know, but I think that, from the way it seems, it seems like he's going to be, if not a starter, he's going to be, because Jack Bicknell's talked about, rotations and, using 6 or 7 different linemen in a game. So maybe a good guard rotation or giving somebody a series off. He's going to be one of those guys. He can, and just the versatility he provides, he can play tackle, he can play guard, and he can play center. He's gotten some reps at center. I don't think they would love him. I don't think they would love it if he had to play center because he's still very inexperienced at that position. But just the flexibility he gives them. I don't think he's a tackle in the Big Ten. He's a little bit smaller for a tackle in the Big Ten. But, he can play both sides of the line. And I'll be curious to see what happens when Renfro is able to kind of get back with the first team because they're still kind of working him slowly along. Bortolini's been working at center. When Renfro returns, they're probably going to put Bortolini back at left guard, where Huber has been practicing. Does Huber get to go compete with Furtney at right guard? I think they still have some things to sort out there. They have a good problem on their hands in the offensive line, I think, but with the amount of guys that they can play, it seems like right now 6 or 7. And I think another guy, I already mentioned him, I think Jonas Oklona, you're curious to see, after a strong start in the spring, how is he going to be able to, build off of that? I think we've seen that. I think he looks really confident. He's playing with this, maintaining those, consistent snaps with the second team, putting himself in a good spot to, have a role this fall, earlier maybe than they thought. And I think slot receiver too, I don't know if you could say he made a jump, but it seems like Skylar Bell, after spring, Will Pauling was in the lead, going to be the first team slot receiver. It would have been surprising in my opinion, it would have been surprising if Bell made a jump over Pauling, but it seems like that's kind of, I don't think it's happened, but I think it's a lot more equal than we think. I think Bell has gotten some more work with the first team in recent practice. I think there's a good competition brewing there. We all saw what Bell could do last year when, he had chances to make plays in that offense, and he did a pretty good job, especially early in the season. That slot receiver position is going to be important in this offense. You look at Longo's, previous teams and offenses, that's always the most productive receiver, generally speaking. So I think that off the top of my head, those guys kind of come to mind. I'm probably, missing some just because a lot has happened. I think there's good competition. I still think there's a lot to be settled here, and we get to see the rest of this week, I believe, of practices. And then they shut it down to continue their preparation for the season. But a lot of good competition, a lot of guys, especially younger guys, taking some steps and interesting battles.
Well, it might be a nice rest for you after going to practice a whole bunch of days in a row. So, but like he said in his press conference before camp started, he loves slot receivers, speaking of Phil Longo. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all to see a lot of both of those guys, of both Skylar Bell and of Will Pauling. One position on the offense that we haven't talked about yet is the tight ends. And camp started out with a bang in sort of ways. The top 2 tight ends or what a lot of people were anticipating would be the top 2 tight ends in Clay Cundiff and Jack Eschenbach. Both were not on the roster. What's sort of been the word around that? Were any of the other guys talking about that? And how did the tight end room look sort of in general without probably the 2 biggest known commodities?
Yeah, it's interesting. We haven't gotten to talk we got to talk to Hayden Rucci at Local Media Day, but that was before, obviously, the news came out the next day. So we haven't gotten to talk to the tight ends yet. They're doing media availability by position group. So I think that's later this week or next week, sometime here coming up soon. So, nothing really new to report on that. It was surprising. You looked at Clay Cundiff as a guy who could be really productive in this kind of offense, just given what he did last year before. He was on his way to a huge season. Through the first couple games, he had over 100 yards receiving and a couple touchdowns. He was Graham Mertz's favorite target, I believe, in those first 3 or 4 games. So, I had high expectations for him in this offense and was surprised to hear the news. For now, it doesn't seem like they'll be back. We'll see what happens. Eschenbach, those 2 guys, are guys who have dealt with injuries in the past, especially Cundiff. It could be medical related. Don't want to speculate too much. But just in terms of the guys on the roster right now, we've seen a lot of Jack Pugh, and I think he's another guy continuing on with what he did in the spring. He's made a couple of nice catches so far, getting a lot of work with the first team offense, and maybe a guy that somebody, most people didn't really think of coming into the season, Riley Nowakowski. Like, he's been pretty good for him, consistent, good hands. He can do a lot of different things. He has that fullback background, so he's a good blocker, and he's very athletic too. So, he's gotten a lot of work with the first team, which again, that would have been surprising even to think about in the spring. That was not on my radar. And Hayden Rucci, he's kind of been between, both of the, first and second team units. I think he'll obviously be a factor. He's the most experienced tight end coming back now in that group. He last year when he got chances to catch the ball, I thought he looked pretty good at it, even though it really wasn't his strong suit. Hasn't been known as a pass catcher, but he's going to have to be in this offense. He's going to have to, be more comfortable running routes. And that's something that we talked to him about in the spring. He was excited for that change, maybe to develop different skills and to do different things. So those are the top 3 right now. We'll see if, we've seen some Tucker Ashcraft, the true freshman with the second team. I'm not sure if he's gotten any first team reps, but, he's a guy that might have a chance to play just because of the numbers at that position group aren't tremendous right now. And it's up for grabs. I mean, anybody can, JT Seagreaves too. He's a guy that's working with the second and third teams. We'll see if he can make a run at it's a wide open position group. Rucci, is going to have a role because, he's played a lot of football, he's an experienced guy, player. But everything else is kind of up for grabs. But early on, Pugh and Nowakowski kind of seem like they're rounding out that top 3.
So the last position on the offense we really haven't touched on is the running backs, and everyone knows who the top 2 are, but the top 3, I should say the third down back or the third back in the rotation was probably the biggest unknown in that room coming into fall camp. We've seen, some Cade Yakimelli, some Jackson Aker, speaking of former fullbacks. What has been sort of the vibe, I should say, around there? Or just how have you seen any of those guys sort of separate themselves to be number 3 behind the 2-headed monster that is Chez Mellusi and Braylon Allen?
Yeah, and quick note, Chez Mellusi and Braylon Allen both have added a different burst to their game, and that's been my biggest takeaway, the running back group so far. Both those guys have looked really good and shown, what they can do in this offense. But in terms of the third back, right now I think I would give the edge to Aker because, Mellusi has missed the last 2 practices after getting hit hard on Saturday by Kamoy Latu on a I think Kamoy would agree, not a smart play without full pads. Aker has been getting work with the first team the last 2 days alongside Allen. Allen last night kind of had a lighter workload. They got a lot of reserves action last night. They did a lot of teamwork. Allen had a couple nice runs last night, but for the most part, we saw a lot of Aker last 2 days. I think he's looked good. I think he looks the part. Obviously, he was recruited as a running back. He started his career here as a running back, played fullback last year. And he played quite a bit of a lot of snaps, but we didn't see him with the ball in his hand a lot. And I think, he, for his size, he's probably about 240, similar size, compared to Allen, very similar body types. And he looks good as a pass catcher. He's got good speed for his size. He lowers that shoulder on running plays, kind of I don't want to say he reminds me of Allen, but like he kind of has a lot of the same skills in my opinion. Very, fast, got speed for his size. He's physical runner. But I still think, Yakimelli's gotten quite a few looks as well with with that second, offensive unit, because Allen and Malusi are both kind of working with the first team. We've seen a lot of two running back looks, but right now I'll give the edge to Aker just because he was moved up to the first team. And even when he was solely with the second group, I think, it seemed like he was getting more snaps than Yakimelli, who Yakimelli made a couple nice plays last night. He's a guy that, again, very comfortable doing a lot of different things and can be an interesting player, if not this year, next year, or in the future as a pass catcher and obviously as a rusher.
Well, let's talk the other side of the ball and switch over to the linebackers, which we have yet to discuss. We all know that looked like Muma was going to be out for a little bit of time now with an injury. I know he was seen with a sling at the last practice. But as Mike Tressel said in the spring, they already have 3 starting inside linebackers between Muma, Jordan Turner, and Jake Chaney. So I don't think there's a ton to worry about there. What I am most interested, though, is the rotation at outside linebacker, because there's a lot of different guys who bring a lot of different skills to the table. So was there anyone in that group that sort of stood out to you in, sort of how were the snaps going around in that room?
Yeah, as I kind of mentioned earlier, the snaps, I felt, a lot of different guys were getting mixed and matched, and, CJ Getz, TJ Bowlers, Daryl Peterson, and Jeff Pietrowski kind of seemed like the top 4 in my opinion. Like Caden Johnson kind of was in the mix too with the second team. Again, like I said, a lot of guys are going to get snaps there. But I think Daryl Peterson has had a nice camp so far. They, as it was kind of well documented in the spring, they're using him a lot of different ways, kind of lining him up at inside linebacker depth, dropping him into coverage or blitzing him off the edge, and kind of just taking advantage of his athleticism in ways that, that maximizes, kind of his versatility. I think he was impressive to start camp here. CJ Getz is, you kind of know who he is at this point. I don't think he got enough respect last year for what he did. I think he was, gave him, consistency, I think is the best word to describe him. He made a couple plays last year, and I think he's been steady to start camp. And TJ Bowlers is a guy I'm really intrigued about, probably the most intriguing guy in that group, just in terms of like his body. He's 270 pounds. They can put him down on the line as almost a defensive end. It's what they're lining him up as. So, that continued here over the first couple of days of camp. So, interested to see if, he can. I think he'll be in that kind of top 4 mix. Jeff Pietrowski too. I think, if you're looking at, this team needs guys to step up as pass rushers after losing Herbig. He had 11 sacks last year, 15 and a half tackles for loss, led the team in both categories. And after that, there was kind of a drop off. Benton was involved too. He had 10 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. But after those two, it's kind of a big drop off. So you need multiple guys to kind of step up. I think if you're looking for somebody who can kind of help, the group collectively pick up the slack, Pietrowski's one of those guys. If he can return to form from his 2021 season when he kind of broke out, I think he had like 6 sacks that year. If he can put those numbers up and stay healthy, unlike last year, he was a starter and got hurt. If he can stay healthy and kind of return to form and give Wisconsin what he gave Michigan State a couple years ago, that'd be a pretty big development for this defense. So, like I said, a lot of different guys doing a lot of different things at that position. I don't think there's one guy who's gonna maybe I'll be wrong, but I don't think there's one guy that is gonna be like a Herbig type and play the whole game. And I think it's gonna be a collective effort there from a lot of players who are very solid.
All right, so I'll get you out of here on this. What is the one biggest question you need answered as they break Platteville camp and head back to Madison for the rest of the fall camp?
I think it's the offensive line still. As I kind of mentioned earlier, they have the starting left tackle, Jack Nelson, and then left guard right now is Joe Huber, center Bortolini, Furtney at right guard, and then Malman at right tackle. I'm just really curious to see what they do, you know, when Renfro or if Renfro returns to the first team. Is that the I mean, he's working with the second team, or do they feel like Bortolini gives him the best option right now at first team center? Is that a position battle? Like, is that like I'm just where do the pieces fit? Is Renfro going to return to the first team? And if so, what happens to Huber? What happens to Bortolini? Bortolini's been very steady for him. So you figure that he would move back to left guard if Renfro is coming back up to the first team at center. But, Huber, they seem very high on him. Do they put him on the right side? I'm just really curious to see. I think that's going to be interesting to see how they figure that out. And Trey Whittick too, is he a guy that's going to be in the mix for maybe a guard spot, or, do they give him a look? Is he a guy that's going to be in that rotation? I think so. He's played a lot of football for him, and, he's been working for both the first and second team here in fall camp. So I just think it's going to be interesting to see how they go about that. That's the most intriguing position battle, in my opinion, or at least I think it's a position battle. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a battle between Jake Renfro's injuries and the other guys who are left there. So yeah. I think that the offensive line in general is always one of the most fascinating things about the Wisconsin football team, because it's been the signature position for a couple decades now. So I'm definitely excited to see how that shakes out there. You talked about the rotations on the defensive side of the ball. There's going to be a lot of guys getting a lot of snaps, I think, especially early on, to see, really who has it. Which true freshmen are going to play is also going to be, I think Jonas Duclona is pretty much a lock to play some meaningful snaps this year. I'm curious as to who else might get in there, especially, I would imagine that the defensive backfield is the place that we are most likely to see some true freshmen. But you mentioned Tucker Ashcraft, who I've also heard good things about from others who have been around fall camp this year. So I'm excited to keep seeing from afar everything that's going on. We appreciate your coverage from up close and everything that you are writing over on BadgerBlitz.com. Where can people find your writing and your other stuff on social media?
They can find me at, on the website at BadgerBlitz.com, and then at mhoganreports on Twitter.
Excellent. Well, Michael, thank you so much for being here. I'm sure we'll have you back again very soon. And until next time, please let us know what you think and what you want to hear about in the Badgers Den. And like I said, until next time, we'll see you in the den.